Cool. Okay. So the goal of this workshop really is to give you all the tools necessary to be able to go and create, your own web application using Python and the other several different tools that we've listed here. We're going to be building a stock dashboard, and I will show you the final product. All right. Okay. So see here, everyone can see my screen, right? We're going to be building this little dashboard that shows us we can, add a company whose stock we want to watch. Maybe we want to see the different price targets, what other analysts have recommended, or any news. So I'll show you a little demo. These are the stocks that we've already added. We can add another one. Let's say, is Facebook already in here? Yeah. Okay, so I'll add this, and it's in there. It's gonna take a second. All right, we got our little stock information. And then at the bottom, you can also click on the name of the stock and you will get, you get to go to their link, get information about that company. And then we can also click on the relevant news, read the articles. And these are articles that may affect the stock price of the company. Cool. Any questions? If you have any questions during the whole thing, please chat the panelists and one of us will answer your questions. All right, so if everyone could navigate to this link, we are going to get started. Let me stop the share. Okay. So I'm going to work through this with all of you, and we're gonna, at the end, get a stock dashboard working for all of us. Does everyone see my screen? One of the panelists could let me know if they can see.
Yes.
Awesome. Okay. So in the web page for this workshop, there was a bunch of prerequisites that were listed, and so hopefully you have gone through all of these prerequisites and installed whatever needed to be installed, because if you've already done that, it'll make this go a lot faster. If you have done those, can you please put in the chat yes, and if not, can you type no? Just so that we can gauge who is ready to go. Okay. All right. Well, if for any reason that you either get lost following the workshop, or you don't have the prerequisites, feel free to just follow along. And these are very detailed steps. Just go through each step, and if you follow each step as listed and as written, you will get the final product that I just showed you. Okay, so since these are prerequisites, we're not going to go through these. I'll let you go through these on your own, and we're going to just start coding. Okay. So here we are. We're going to set up our project. So let's do that. If you're not familiar with Terminal, we can just open up a little Finder window, or however you create your folders. We'll create a new folder here, and we'll call it Stock Dashboard. Cool. And then we can open this in our Visual Studio Code, which is an IDE that I use, and an IDE was one of the prerequisites that was listed. So if you have that, you can follow along with me, or you can use whichever IDE you wish. Okay, cool. So the next thing we're going to do is in the terminal, and to get to a terminal, open right here. Okay. So we need to initialize a Git repository. So I'm just going to type in This will create an empty Git repository for us, and we're ready to. If you have not ever done this on your system, then you'll have to log in using your credentials. And then the next step we want to do is create a virtual environment that we can use. And these are just nice because you can kind of isolate the project that you're working on and the different requirements that you have. So I'm just going to copy and paste the command, and we'll get our virtual environment in here. So the next thing we do is we activate this virtual environment to make sure that we are only working in that environment and we're not touching anything else. So we put in that command. And as you can see in the README, every command that I'm typing in here is listed with the instructions on what you need to do. So now we're going to create a couple different files. I'm going to go back to my IDE here for that. I think that'll be easier for you all to see. So this is our virtual environment that we had created. I'm going to create a new file called app.py. And this will be our Python files, one of the files that will be the actual application. And then we're going to create, okay, so this is a git ignore file. A git ignore file is what you check in. So for example, I want to check in, all this code. I don't really want this virtual environment file, all this folder in there, right? Because it's just going to clutter the code. This isn't really code that we're writing. It's kind of just a additional thing. And we don't want to check that into our GitHub repository. So we're going to create that file. And then we'll create a requirements.txt file. This file, what this tells us, gives us a list of all the things that we need, all the different libraries and packages that we need to be able to run this application. And then the next step is we're just going to copy in these two things into our git ignore, because we don't want to, when we're checking things in, checking files in, we just want Git to completely ignore these two folders because they're kind of just like extra stuff that we don't need, right? So we'll save that. So at this point, you should have in your folder, in your stock dashboard folder, you should have a .git ignore file, an app.py file, and then a requirements.txt file. Any questions so far? Please put them in the chat if you do. Or if you have any thoughts. Okay, cool. All right, next thing. So like I said, the requirements.txt file is exactly what it is and what it says. It's requirements, the different libraries and packages that we'll need to run the file, the app. So I've already provided this for you here. So we're just going to copy and paste this and put it directly in our requirements.txt file. And then the next thing we do, since we created that virtual environment, we need to now install all of these packages into our virtual environment. So I'm going to go back to my terminal. There we go. Right, so there's a command listed here of how we're going to install all of those. So what you do is, so Python -m pip install, and then -r tells me, okay, we need to provide a file. And the requirements.txt is just, just a list of all the different packages. So we're going to do that, and we're going to see a bunch of different output, and it's going to show you that it's being installed into your virtual environment. Cool. So the reason I did this work for you is because it's going to speed up our process a little bit. Cool. So our virtual environment is ready to go. We have our requirements file. We have an app.py file. Great. So now let's add something. Let's make our app do something. Okay. So we're going to make it just return, just at this time. We just wanted to return hello. Just print out hello on the screen, right? Let's see what happens. So we have the file. You see it's returning a string. That's all it is returning the string hello. And when we run the app, we'll be able to see that. We should. So like it says here, all you do is Python app.py. And we see it's running on HTTP 127.0.0.1, 5000. And I'm going to copy this and paste it in here. And hopefully it should say hello. And it does. Cool. All right, so now that we've got kind of the feel of things, let's add in some more concepts, right? And then so one of the prerequisites was creating a Heroku account. What Heroku allows is you can create different applications and you can host them on Heroku, and you get a link, like it's hosted on there, and you can share that with your friends. What I showed you earlier was hosted on Heroku. So if you have not logged in using Heroku before on your system, you will have to run this command first. But since we've already done it, since I've already done it, we're not going to need to do it now. Okay, so now we need to create a proc file. What this is, when we push the code to the Heroku Git repository and we create the app, what it's going to need to do is start a web service. And this proc file is going to tell it to do that. So let's create a proc file. And it just needs one line. This is it. Right? So web, and then G-Unicorn is a tool that it's going to use to create this web service. And then it just tells it app.py, and then the name of the app is just app. So this is very simple. We also need to specify a runtime.txt file. This tells the Heroku app, okay, this is the virtual environment the Python environment that we need to run it in. So we're going to create a runtime.txt file. And we just need one line, Python.381. This is just the version. So you may need to change the version depending on what you have installed on your system. But you'll see the problem really quickly if that does happen. All right, so now we're ready to create our Heroku app. So all we need to do is Heroku create. It's going to take a second. Cool. So this is our app. Right now, it doesn't do anything because we haven't actually pushed our code yet. So what we need to do to push our code is we'll need to add the remote to our app. So we're going to do remote, and then the app name is right here. Cool. So we set our Git remote, and now what we can do is push our code. So if we do git status, we'll see that we need to check in all these files. So I'll do git add dot. The dot tells it to add everything. We're going to push everything, right? So, and then I want to commit this with the message first commit. And I'll push it. And we'll see a bunch of output, and we'll get a link that'll point to our app that's being hosted by Heroku. This will also take a second. You see it's installing all the different packages that we had listed in requirements.txt, and it says we're going to start looking at the proc file, launching. All right, here is our link to our app, and we should see a big hello on the screen, maybe a little one. It's going to take a second because it's not complete. Okay, now it's done. See our hello. Our app is up. Cool. So now what we're going to do is let's define some environment variables. The goal of this workshop is to create a stock dashboard. So we need to add all these features and a database. So we're going to do that now. Okay. So here we are. Let's create a file called config.py. This will hold all our config information. So right now, with this file, when we import this file, it'll tell our app to use the right config. Okay. And then what we need to do is export the app settings. And you'll see later where this is being used in the next step. So this is a local environment variable that we're setting. We need to also do this for the Heroku, right? So we will do that as well. We'll say we're just going to use the production config. What you could do is you could do like a class development config here, right? And you could define the different variables you need. But for this workshop, we're not going to do that. We're just going to work with production config, which is not the best way to code when you're working on software, but you should always have a development or staging servers of some kind. But we're going to work in production because we're going to hope that everything turns out perfectly. Okay. So we set our config environment variable. So now we need to, in our app, we need to make sure that we actually use that config, right? So we'll go to our app.py, and all we need to do is add in this line. So it tells us to import the production config, and we'll need to, at the top, import OS, because we need the OS package to be able to get that setting. So next step, we need to, again, push our changes. Are there any questions at this point? Again, the README is, I believe my volunteers have been putting the README in the chat. So like I said, if you're behind, you can follow along at your own pace. And at the end, if you're not able to complete the whole workshop, you can go back. This will be up. And I will also make the code available in the GitHub repository after the workshop so that you have no issues getting this up and running on your own. Okay. So now what we need to do is create a database. We need to hold some data, right? Let me go back to my, okay, so this is all being stored in a database, right? We want to store, all we need to store for our purpose is the stock ticker, name or ticker, that's what they call it. And we can get all this other information just based on that name, right? So that's all. We're just going to create a model to hold that information and then in a database so that we can actually store the different stocks that we're adding. Okay, so another one of the requirements was to have a PostgreSQL app downloaded and on your computer. So we're going to use that now, and I'm going to just open that up. All we need to do is create database stocks. All right, so we got our database. Let's see if it's created. We see it. Awesome. So we don't need this anymore. That's all we needed. That's all we needed that for. Okay, so the next thing we need to do is we need to define another environment variable that will hold the path to this database that we've just created, right? So the next thing we're going to do is in our config, we're doing all of this in the config. We're going to add the database URL. We're just going to copy and paste this. We also need to actually define what this is, right? So I'm going to do export. This is down here, right here. So we need to be able to find this. Okay, so that's all set. And then in our app.py file, we can now connect to this database. So we have this, this is the only line you need to connect to your database. So this line tells us, let's connect to the database that's defined by this variable, which is again defined by this environment variable, and that we've just set to this, right? Cool. So we're going to import our stock model, which we'll create in the next step in app.py. All right, so now let's actually create this, because right now it doesn't exist. So I'm going to create another file called models.py. And normally in a large scale app, you'll have a bunch of different models, but we just have our stock model. So I'm going to create this, and I'll explain what this is. So this tells us, this is an ID, a unique identifier that will identify each entry in our table. And then we have a field called name, which is back in, which corresponds to this. So you could define it to be ticker if you want, but I've defined it as name, which the proper term would be to use the ticker. But for now, we're content with name. Okay. Cool. So another thing we need to do is define a manage.py file. This will essentially take care of any migrations. And database migrations, what they do is, if you, let's say we've created this model, we've created some entries in our table, we have some data being stored. If we change the model, we need to be able to then seamlessly, use this new model without having to delete our old database, move the data over. So the migrations will take care of all of that. We don't have to do anything. So I'm going to copy that, create a new file, manage.py, and put that in here. So we have that. So now we need to run these 3 commands to actually initialize and then migrate the schema as well. So we'll do this. Oh, oops. I got an error saying SQL Alchemy is not defined because I didn't import it. So let me go back. Yeah, I missed this line. Okay. Right, let's init. Okay. Now we will migrate. Cool. And then one more thing, upgrade to the correct version. So we got some output saying we need to we should set this to false. So I'm going to do that in my config. I think I had done that here and I forgot to add that. Yeah, so we want to set this to false. But it's fine, we'll upgrade. Cool, so we're connected to our database and we're ready to go. Let's see next. So this is actually just locally, right? We didn't actually create the database for our app that's hosted on Heroku. So we're going to add a Heroku PostgreSQL add-on that will create the database for us on Heroku that we can use. So we just type this. And what this will do, once we get this, okay. So I'm going to type in Heroku config, right? And we'll see our database URL. This was just set when we added this, this add-on right here. That way, our app will know, it's searching for this, it'll know that this is the database I have to connect to, and we're all set there. All right, now, any questions? No? Okay, cool. So next up is, now let's make our app do something. We want to get that nice front end. We want to display the information. So what I'm going to now do is create a folder called templates, which is going to hold just an HTML file. And that HTML file will just display all the information that we, right here. This is just simple HTML and CSS. So we're going to create those files right now. I want to create a new folder called templates. And then in templates, I'll create a new file, index.html. And again, I have provided the code in here for you, so you can copy and paste it. I will explain it once we get it. Okay, so what we're doing here, we're going to use Jinja Templating, right? So you see these little like parentheses here. What we do is in our app.py file, we will give this template the information necessary to render that onto our front end. So we see, for company and select companies, these are coming from our application. And I'll show you where that comes from and how that's being created. Okay. All the different, you saw the name, you saw the stock price, you saw the year-to-date high, the low, and then price targets. So it's really 59 lines of code, right? It's not much. It doesn't take much to get it working. So that's really nice. Now let's add some color. Let's add some styling. It's always fun. So I'm going to create another folder called static. And then another folder in there called styles, which will hold all of our index.css. So in index.html, we said we want to import the style sheet, and tells us here we want the URL for static styles index.css. And again, I have provided that code in here, so just copy it and paste it. So for example, we have a body tag in our index.html. I said, I want the color to be this color. I want the background this color. And once you have this running, you can play around with it, change the coloring around, change the CSS around, whatever you want it to look like. Cool. Okay, so we've taken care of the front end. Now we need to actually give this information to that template, to that index.html, so that it can be rendered. And I'm going to, this is all in here, so we're going to copy and paste this. And again, I will explain it in our app.py. I'm going to replace all of this. All right, so let's take a look at what's going on here, right? So we have connected to our database right here. We imported our stock model. The different things that you can actually show. Okay, index.html. So first, if the request method is post, that means we're going to do a post. We're going to add a company to our front end. Okay, and you'll see here this form action. The method is post, so that tells my app that I'm going to add a company here. I want the value to be it's going to get this ID, and then the value, it'll grab the value from the request form. So what we do is, there's two things you can do. Either you can provide the company name, in which case we need to do some processing on our end to figure out, okay, which company did you really mean? Because we could find multiple matches. Or you provide the actual ticker. So for example, I'll show the ticker is like just, if this is our ticker, right? But the name is NetApp, right? So there's two different things that are going on here. So we need to handle both. You could, tell your user, no, I don't want company name, I just want ticker. You should always know. But for ease of use and just in general, when you're creating something like a stock dashboard, you want the user to be able to search the company name because they might not always know the ticker. And if you give them the opportunity, if you give them the chance to just provide the company name, it's going to make their life easier and they're more likely to use your application. Okay, cool. So in the case that they did provide us a ticker, we're going to grab that information. And so this line right here is going to grab all of the entries that we have in our database at this time. That tells us these are all the stocks, and then we have the name. And if we see that we're filtering by the ticker that was provided, right? We're going to see, is the stock that you provided, is that already in our database? If it's not, then let's add it, right? But if it is, we're not going to add it. We only add things once. It's a unique entry. Okay, so in the case that you provide the company name, now we need to do some kind of looking up on our end to figure out what did you mean. So at this point, we're going to have to use our REST API, our stock REST API, which is provided by Finnhub. And Finnhub was another one of the prerequisites for this workshop. If you create that account, you'll get access to a free stock REST API. And I'm going to let's go to that right now. Okay, so Finnhub, let's go to. So at the top of, this is our Finnhub dashboard. This tells us, we'll go to the documentation. So a little bit about, REST. I have a section here. Okay, so if you're not familiar with REST APIs, I put in a little section at the top explaining what a REST API is, and then I put a link where you can go into more detail about that. So first off, an API, which is an application programming interface, is basically a contract between an information provider and the user. So in this case, the provider is Finnhub. That's the company that's giving us the information, and we're the user. So we need to know, okay, how do we use this API? And we need to have certain, we just need to have some rules and some format that we need to follow. And that's standardized, and that's what REST is. REST is a software architecture, which developers, in this case, Finnhub developers, will follow to implement this web service. And all a REST web service request contains is the URL and then the HTTP method. An HTTP method would be like get, a post. Post is what I showed you earlier. Post is creating a resource. And there's going to be obviously a delete, and then there's patch. Patch is going to modify the current state of a resource. For our application, all we have is get and post. And when we look at the code, I'll show you where we're making the requests, and that indeed all we needed was the URL and the HTTP method. And then there's a bunch of there's 5 required rules that someone developing a RESTful web service needs to follow. Then there is a optional one, which I didn't include in here. But if you're interested, you can always follow this link and read more about that. All right, so back to the API that we're going to be using. So this is a documentation. It's really nice documentation. And it tells us the different kind of information that we can get from this website. We're going to be using a few of these to get our information. So for example, in our app here, we have this buy recommended by 14 analysts. In the stock market world, there's always analysts, and analysts are always predicting like, okay, this company is gonna do this well, or it's not gonna do well. So we recommend that you sell it, or we recommend that you hold and don't sell, or we recommend that you buy more because it's gonna do really well. So this is coming from, as an example, is coming from this API right here, recommendation trends. And this website is really nice, and this REST API is really nice in general because they give you little code snippets too that you can use for your requests. So the only thing we need from here, besides the documentation, we're going to need our API token, and that's how we'll authenticate so that we can actually get the information, and that will be available in. I'll go at the bottom. I've provided them here. So I'll open up this, and you'll see my API token, which is okay. I've created that here. All I need to do is define this, and I can make my REST requests. Again, we need to set the local environment variable API token, just because of the way that we've exported that. And if you look in the app.py, you'll see here API token is a global variable that we've defined, and we're going to grab it from the environment variable because we never want to hard code this information in the actual code. So this way, it's grabbing it from our environment, and we don't have to worry about leaking that information. Because if I were to check that in and someone were to see it, that they will be able to use it too, right? Like you're seeing it now, you can use the API token that I have and make your quests. So the next thing will be, we need to do the same for our Heroku config, kind of like we did with the database or with the app settings. So we'll do that, and we'll set it to the same thing. That's going to set it. Okay, cool. And now we can run it we're going to run it locally just to see if it's working or not. So instead of doing Python app.py, I'm going to use Flask to run the application. And what we do now is export Flask app, because that's what our app is called. We defined it as that. We exported that, and then we do Flask run, and we'll get a link, same place. Okay. Let's see if it works. Didn't work. What happened to all of our styling? Oh, okay. So I had to refresh my cache. So right now it's empty because our database is empty. We don't have anything. So let's try adding a stock. I'm going to add Apple because I want to show an example of what happens if you add a company whose name matches a bunch of different options. Submit that. So it says, okay, I found 3 different companies. Which one do you want to watch? So I say Apple Inc. That's what I want. So I'll submit that. Cool. So we got our information. And let's do a little side by side here of where we're getting the information from, because that's always interesting, right? Okay. So if we kind of trace what happened. So we provided the company name, Apple. So we did that. And we did remember I said that a REST request, all it needs is the HTTP method and the URL, right? This is our URL. And then we have to provide the API token so that we can actually use it and get our information. And the way I found this API is by looking at the documentation. So I use stock symbol because I wanted to get the actual symbol, the ticker for Apple, the company. I believe it might be in the company symbols. Yeah, so here we have company symbols, or it says stock symbol here. And you can if you're using this, you can copy and paste this exact call if you want, and that will get you the desired information. So remember, we had hard code. We don't want to hard code our API token. We want to grab that. So that's in there. So I added a little comment. We may get multiple matches like we did when we provided Apple. So we want the user to be able to select which one they want to actually add to their watch list. Okay, so there might be a case where we actually didn't find anything, in which case we should raise an error. We should say, we didn't find it. Maybe you did something wrong. But in this application, we've just said, just let it go. Just not a good technique. But I challenge you to maybe fix that on your own. Then there could also be a case where we found exactly one match, right? That means, okay, we found it, let's add it. We're gonna commit it to our database. And then this is where we get all of this information from. Again, I'm gonna walk you through the different APIs that we've used. Okay, so quote, this is the actual stock price. Again, this is a real-time information. So I'm gonna refresh this. It says $49.91 for NetApp. I'm gonna type it in. 49.83. I guess it's a little bit, it's loading, 58. So it is real time, which is really cool that you're seeing that. And then we can get, I wanted to add, I wanted users to be able to click on this and just go to the website for that company. So the way I did that was I got the information from the stock profile endpoint, which again will be, so you see company profile 2 here. That's where I got that from. And then, so I also wanted some news articles that are relevant to this company. And if you see in each of these cards, all of these are going to be about this company that's listed up here. So Apple, we have Amazon, all of these articles are going to be, if they're not in the title, it's about that. It's either mentioned, it's mentioned in that article. And then so that was company news. And the next one we're getting is some metrics about the company. For example, what was the 52-week high price? What was the 52-week low price? And again, I will take you to the place in the documentation where I got that from. Price target. Okay, basic financials. And you can see the different information that you can extract from this response. I just wanted to see 52-week high, 52-week low, just to see how the company's been doing. And then again, another one of these is price target. This is something else that analysts often do, is they'll set a price target for a company. And we can get that information. And like I showed you before in our, this sentence here, this comes from this request right here, which tells us the recommendation trends. What are analysts saying about this stock? Yeah, so that's the information about this. Any questions at this time? I know this is a lot of information, but I want to just emphasize that all of this is in the README right here. And you can follow it step by step and you will get the final result. We've had 3 people try this already on their own and they've been able to accomplish it. The goal was to give you the tools necessary and just kind of get you kickstarted with these cool new tools. Okay, so we were running it locally. Now let's actually push it to our Heroku app. Let's add everything. I'm going to say added DB and there's a bunch of other things. Features. We'll just go with that. We're going to push it. It's going to take a second. And then after this, we'll run one more command to upgrade our the database that is backing our app. And then we'll be able to use it. Okay, let's run this command. Okay. So here is the link. This is a moment of truth. Okay. All right, it's up. Let's add Amazon. Cool, that worked. Let's add Apple. We wanted Apple Inc. Add that. Let's try adding a company that doesn't exist. So unfortunately, Toys R Us is no longer on the stock exchange because for sad reasons, they went out of business, but we're gonna add, and we're not gonna find them. So let's see here. Nothing is gonna happen, but like I said earlier, it should raise an error saying, we didn't find this company, you did something wrong. Let's add another one, just because why not? I'm gonna add another company called Qualcomm, but I'm just gonna provide a queue. I wanna see if it finds the, and we'll, uh-oh, something happened. Okay, so what happened here actually is I have the free Finnhub account, right? And with that, you're only allowed a certain number of API calls per minute. So we've overloaded, we went past our limit so we're gonna wait maybe 30, 40 seconds and refresh and we'll be fine.
Trisha, meanwhile, can you tell them where they can access the video?
Yeah.
Yeah.
We'll be posting all of the recordings on the website, including this one. So you'll be able to follow along if you weren't able to. And yeah, so look out for that email. We'll be sending an email with the links to the recordings and all the important links such as the GitHub. Let's see.
Okay.
All right, so remember we had entered that queue. Obviously, we're gonna get a lot of matches because a lot of companies have Q in their name. So I just want Qualcomm. I'm gonna select that and hit submit. We should get that. So there's a lot of calls being made here, right? So if we let's just do a quick math. So 1, 2, 3, 4. There's 4 companies that we've added. This is an API call. This is 1, 2. This is 1, so 3, and then 4 here. This is 5, and this is 6. So that's 24. And you're only allowed to use, with the free account, you can only do 30 per second. So what happened is we tried to just do too many calls and we got a 500. So yeah, and if you would like this, you can actually use this. You can go to this link and use the app, and you'll see if you open it up on your computer, you'll see the same information because we had added our stocks to our database. It's a persistent database, and that information is visible to everybody who uses this application. And that was it today. I know I flew by all of this, but I'm going to post the link here. And you can follow along starting from the prerequisites to show you how to install everything. And then also the code is in there, everything that you need. I will encourage you to actually add some more features. So the one thing that is missing from here is the ability to delete the stocks. What if I don't want to watch Amazon anymore? I want to get rid of that. So we need to add a delete feature, right? So once you have this running, I encourage you to maybe try to do that on your own, add the delete. And in this repository, I'll include a bunch more links on Flask and the different tools that we've used. And lastly, you can always email ngywitquestions@netapp.com if you have any trouble with getting this up and running. I think we'll stay on for maybe a few more minutes if anyone has any questions. Yeah, and you can, yes, and you can email us even after today. In fact, if you get this running, I would love to see what you all do with this, with these tools and the different apps that you create. I would love to see that. So share with us that too. All right, if there's no more questions, then yes. And Anne-Marie says, make sure you mention the session that you attended so that we know what you're talking about and we can easily assist you with that as well. All right. Well, I hope that you're all, actually, since we have some time, I would love to hear what your favorite workshop has been today and what you're enjoying about the day. So drop it in the chat. Maybe something that you learned today, something that you want to continue exploring after today. There will be a post survey so that we can also get that information from you then. All right, well, I will let you all go early then. Yeah, we have a 3D printing session at 5:15. That'll be really cool. So make sure you visit that and enjoy the rest of your workshops. Like I said, if you have any questions, email ngywitquestions@netapp.com or have your parent do that for you. All right, thank you everyone. Thank you so much for attending. Thank you to Nivi and Mahi for your help. I appreciate it. And all of our, and Anne-Marie for answering the chats. Thank you so much. Bye everyone. Have a great weekend.